Control C. Hi, how are you doing, everybody? My name is Del, or Delzar, and really, I'm just gonna do what the fuck I want. So, let's begin. So, this is from a channel I've never seen or really heard of, but I'm thinking it looks good because I saw a thumbnail and said, "Fuck it," I just feel like it's gonna be a vibe. So, The Man from the Sea, a cosmic horror short story inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. Okay. Anthologies of short horror stories. These will be a collection of independent short stories aimed to explore various facades of the horror genre, with the expected and channel, cosmic horror, body horror, liminal horror, abstract horror, found footage horror, supernatural horror, psychological horror, dark fantasy, and grimdark. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna leave the link in the description. Well, links in the description so you can go out and support these people. Anyways, let's begin. See you later, local. Okay, that's a sound. That's a foghorn. Yeah, that makes sense. On brand. I fucking like the film grain already. It
It
gives
was
a
the
very
summer of 18.
so film grain and voice, drab colors, very thick fucking outlines on these things. It's dark. Oh, I'm loving this. And I know for a fact I got a friend who's gonna. I'm just gonna subscribe now. I got a friend who loves horror shit, and they're gonna eat this up.
1877, when I was stationed a few miles out to sea at an old
Mm-hmm.
fort that was now being used as a treatment and recovery facility for the wounded. It was a quiet day, and I remember climbing to the south tower of our fort.
It took me a second. I kept moving this up and down because I'm trying to see whether or not these grimy little fucking prints were on my actual monitor. If it was just the thing that they've added, you can even see if they've added like specks of dirt, as if the lens was fucking filthy. Ugh.
The sun glistened
The
each
attention to
wave,
detail is so
and in
nice.
that perfect painting, a peculiar figure emerged. I couldn't distinguish exactly what it was, but it seemed to be a man walking towards the shore.
Hmm.
The waves seemed to push him forward, but he was almost motionless to the impact, as if pushing back against the sea with each stride. He did not flinch, but rather the sea moved along with him. We sounded the
What
alarm and rushed
the
to the
fuck?
beach. As soon as his feet touched dry sand, we pointed our guns to him and shouted for him to stop moving. He stopped, looked around, and fell to his knees. The stranger was picked up and brought to our sick bay. A medical team soon followed to examine.
This is the SCP shit where they're just like, "Oh, we're gonna let it back in here." It's like, no, you idiots. It wants for you to let him closer to the rest of your society, and then you all died.
him. I was one of the first to take a closer look. He did not utter a single word, and
Oh,
was intriguing not only by appearance, but also smell. He had a sort of metallic charcoal air surrounding him.
metallic
The most
charcoal.
striking feature was a metal mask encasing his head completely. It appeared to be
Fuck.
melted directly to the skull, to perfectly fit him up to.
I I was literally just gonna take my initial guess was, something melted on his face and he got covered in it. But if it's like perfectly fitted for him, it might have been like something that's man made instead. I was gonna say like, did he survive a nuke and he's just been encased in this metal?
To his neck. His mouth and nose were covered by this thick metal plate, appearing as a single sheet molded to the subject's cranium. We couldn't understand how the subject was breathing. We couldn't identify a single point where the skin came loose. We checked his body for wounds or marks, anything that might help us understand what happened to the man. Our first thought was that he might have been a prisoner of war,
This is
tortured,
true.
maimed, and somehow he escaped his captors. While I was examining his mask, a nurse started cutting his robes from the back. Suddenly, she let out a horrifying scream. We
What is
turned
it? These
around towards
skeletons?
her. The nurse pushed herself back into a corner gasping for air, then pointed at the man's back.
Their wings, a
What we
tail.
saw that day was nothing but unholy. Pulsating orifices lined
He
his
breathes
spine,
through them.
all the way down his back. I counted 12 of them before I had to throw up. After I pulled myself together, I went back in to take a closer look. These holes were nothing we've ever seen before. They began directly on the surface of the skin and had a small cilia attached to the interior walls, ending in fleshy membranes. These gaps went further into the body, as if there was no ribcage or other organs. His skin was pale and translucent, with little to no hair covering it. His fingers, abnormally large,
Are they
while
gonna
his height
execute
and
him?
overall bone structure was that of an average human man. The lungs needed further examination. As for how his breathing apparatus worked, it remained to be investigated. The nurse administered a heavy dose of anesthesia, while a few soldiers grabbed a bone saw, a chisel, and started working around the metal plating. It was a slow, exhausting process, with only millimeters of progress done by the hour. We took turns, with each one chiseling just enough until we heard a crack. The mask split in two. The opening wasn't showing any skin, but rather contrasted the dark gray metal to the pitch black behind it. I grabbed a nipper and gently tried pulling it apart. It moved.
Oh, fuck.
Then I heard a faint, muffled, screeching sound. It was coming from the patient's back. He was responding to the pain. The nurse grabbed another vial of anesthetics, but I told her to stop. I wanted to see his reaction.
Oh, you! No. At one point I was gonna say, like, he's in pain, let him go back to sleep. But if you want him to be in pain, you are asking for it. Don't. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit my mic. But this motherfucker's asking for it. He deserves everything he gets. I feel no remorse for you. When you just said, I'm going to keep using these pliers and peel this thing that's obviously been sealed on his face for so long, and not care.
Two other doctors grabbed the other side of the mask, and we started pulling harder. The orifices began gulping air violently. A strong pull from one of the doctors ripped a chunk of metal from the mask. We moved in closer to inspect the man's face. Looking down on it, I felt my knees give away.
Yep.
In that small opening was nothing but evil. What appeared to be was a nest of snakes, curled up, slithering, living inside that space. The same shrieking sound came back again. This time it sounded within the whole fort. We took a step
unleashed
back.
The unholy
patient
abomination.
lifted his body from the operating table. His eyes rolled back into his head, showing nothing but black concrete spheres. With both his arms, he grabbed his mask and started pulling it apart, ripping chunks of metal, revealing more and more of the pulsating mass of serpentine bodies.
This is one of those things like, oh, I would have been a peaceful sealed creature, but you literally broke the seals, opened up the... I feel... I would punch you. I would punch the person who did this. If I'm in the room with y'all and I'm like, what is happening? Y'all are pulling off his mask? You know that he has the weird biological bullshit going on, right? Have you examined the rest of his body yet? Checked out any of that? Ran some blood tests first? You tell he ain't dying right now from fucking choking. Shit.
I pushed the chamber doors open to alert the others. Then I felt something grabbing onto my left foot. I turned to see a disfigured corpse, dressed in its soldier uniform, hanging onto me. He whispered. I violently pulled my leg back and yelled to my colleagues to get out of there. I passed the mortuary and saw the bodies rising from their tables, the physician being dismembered by them. From the patient's room, I heard screaming. I was cursed to the sea. Now to it I will bind thee. The staircase was filled with bodies, some crawling up, others collapsing from above. I worked my way through the guts and twitching human remains up to the first floor, looking for the exit. The concrete halls turned to madness. Patients eating their own flesh, soldiers pushing their blades upon themselves. I slipped on a pool of blood and fell on my back. At that moment, a soldier crawled on top of me.
Yep.
Holding his severed arm, he whispered. While I was being dragged by other deranged soldiers, I saw the exit moving further away. I felt helpless, the dead grabbing my limbs, holding me down. Their blood fell on my face, and I could smell the burnt charcoal, the vile metal taste on the tip of my tongue. In all this madness, I saw the man from the sea, standing on the other side of the corridor. His head unfolded into countless moving appendages. At that instant, the dead let me go, and one by one, they disappeared behind our patient. Everything was swallowed into his darkness. His gaze pierced 1,000 hauntings and shined upon me. He looked me in the eye, and I could hear his voice, clear inside my head. For a moment, my mind escaped that place. It saw indescribable entities, light trapped in an infinite...
I'm gonna go back some. I may or may not have stayed up way too late and I passed the fuck out and I just woke up again. What the fuck happened? Last time I was listening and conscious, man had something crawling on his fucking chest.
Smell the burnt charcoal, the vile metal taste on the tip of my tongue. In all this madness, I saw the man from the sea, standing on the other side of the corridor. His head unfolded into countless moving appendages. At that instant, the dead let me go, and one by one, they disappeared behind our patient. Everything was swallowed into his darkness. His gaze pierced 1,000 hauntings and shined upon me. He looked me in the eye, and I could hear his voice, clear inside my head.
Shit,
For a moment, my mind escaped that place. It saw indescribable entities, light trapped in an infinite space, the dread of being lost, forgotten. I came to my senses, turned around and ran as fast as I could. The warm breeze hit my face as I climbed the top of the south tower. My mind was still hanging to the mesmerizing gaze, and I felt my spirit left behind in that corridor. The stranger made his way back to the beach.
Escape, or is he fucked?
Following his steps were the resurrected corpses of our soldiers, all quietly moving behind him, with their faces trapped towards the horizon.
Like a funeral march.
Their punished bodies still being dragged to obey another king, not letting them to rest. While their bones are yet to be dust, they must still serve. Even in death, one must fear. Standing on top of the tower, I saw the waters pulling back violently. Gargantuan creatures began revealing themselves. Pushing out of the waves were indescribable blobs of flesh, lidless eyes, feathered serpents, abominations of proportions that I've never seen.
Yeah, no, this is just what happens when you decide to fuck around with the wrong shit, and all of a sudden you have complete and utter hell break loose. Also, the monster designs, fucking cool. I don't know if these are like custom and they're like their own designs or not, but this right here in the middle it gives me ideas. I want to use this design, but obviously I can't because it's someone else's. This one, pretty cool. This is just Cthulhu in the background. This one is also pretty cool, but it just reminds me of Cthulhu in the background.
Or could comprehend, greeted the man from the sea. They welcomed our patient with chants and screams, their twisted motion moving the waters further and further away from the shore. Their screams were slowly coming down to a screech, accompanied by rhythmic hums. A foul metallic stench filled the air. The man from the sea stood upon the shore, surrounded by the hushed hummings of his awaiting followers. Did he summon them from their slumber, or were they just inviting him back into the abyss? What he said to me, I cannot voice. Death as we know it is merciful, for we do not know when we shall meet. But from deep beneath, it found a voice in this ungodly creature, banished it in its iron prison, only for us fools to set it free. It could have circled the oceans and disappeared back into the unknown. And by chance, it found us, a speck of dust in this infinite sea.
This is unironically, like, legit, like, one of the best fucking stories I've heard in a bit. I mean, I'm fucking fading out of reality as I'm like, passing out actively, but this is straight up fucking great and creepy as shit. But, please, everyone, get down to the description and support the original fucking creators. Thank you very much if you do. It's not even a thank you. Just take your ass over there and do it. Okay? I'd be happy if you did.